What if I told you that the rarest personality type, making up less than 2% of the population, could be the most psychologically formidable person you'll ever meet? Yeah, I'm talking about the INFJ, the so-called advocate or counselor type. Now, before you roll your eyes thinking this is another fluff piece about how INFJs are magical unicorns who can read your mind, let me stop you right there. We're diving deep into something most people don't want to talk about, the shadow side of the INFJ that makes them, well, let's just say, incredibly complex to deal with. You know, it's funny how everyone talks about INFJs like they're these gentle, mystical beings who just want to save the world and understand everyone's feelings. But here's the thing nobody mentions: that same cognitive wiring that makes them incredibly insightful. It also gives them capabilities that, when they're pushed to their limits or operating from their shadow, can make them more psychologically intense than any other personality type out there. The perfect storm: understanding INFJ cognitive functions. Let's break this down real quick. INFJs operate with something called introverted intuition as their dominant function. Sounds fancy, right? But here's what it actually means. These folks are constantly processing patterns, connecting dots that others don't even see exist, and basically running a supercomputer in their heads 24/7. They're picking up on your micro-expressions, your tone shifts, that slight hesitation when you answered their question. They've already figured out 3 possible reasons why you're acting weird before you've even realized you're acting weird. Now pair that with their auxiliary function, extrovert feeling. This means they're not just understanding emotions, they're actively manipulating the emotional atmosphere around them. And I don't mean that in a necessarily negative way, but think about it. Someone who can read you like an open book and knows exactly what emotional buttons to push? That's a powerful combination, folks. Their tertiary function, introverted thinking, gives them this scary ability to systematically analyze and categorize everything they've observed about you. They're building mental models of how you work, what motivates you, what scares you. It's like they're creating a user manual for every person they meet. And their inferior function, extrovert sensing, when it's unhealthy, can make them either completely checked out from reality or obsessively focused on sensory experiences in ways that can be self-destructive. The door slam, nuclear option of interpersonal relationships. Alright, let's talk about the infamous INFJ door slam. You've probably heard about it if you've spent any time reading about personality types. But here's what most articles won't tell you: it's not just about cutting someone off. It's about the complete and utter psychological annihilation of that person's existence in the INFJ's world. See, when an INFJ decides you're done, you're not just blocked on social media or ignored at parties. You cease to exist in their universe. They have this terrifying ability to completely emotionally detach from someone they once cared about deeply. One day you're their best friend, their confidant, maybe even their romantic partner, and the next, you might as well be a stranger on the street. No, scratch that. A stranger would get more acknowledgement. What makes this particularly intense is that it's usually not a rash decision. INFJs have been watching, calculating, giving you chances you didn't even know you were getting. They've been running scenarios in their head, weighing your actions, analyzing patterns of behavior. By the time they slam that door, they've already mourned the relationship, processed the grief, and moved on, all while you had no idea anything was wrong. You're basically breaking up with someone who already broke up with you 3 months ago in their head. And here's the kicker. Once that door is slammed, it's usually permanent. INFJs don't do second chances after the door slam. They've already given you your second, third, and 15th chance. You just didn't know it. When they're done with a finality that can leave people genuinely shaken. The manipulation paradox: saints or puppeteers? Now, this is where things get really interesting. INFJs are often portrayed as these ethical, moral champions who would never hurt a fly. And sure, most of them genuinely want to help people. But let's be real here. When you combine deep emotional intelligence with intuitive pattern recognition and a strong sense of knowing what's best, you've got a recipe for some serious psychological manipulation. I'm not saying all INFJs are manipulative. Far from it. But when an INFJ goes dark, when they're operating from their shadow, they can be master manipulators who make other types look like amateurs. They know exactly what to say to get under your skin, how to phrase things to plant seeds of doubt, how to use your own emotions against you. They can make you question your own reality because they understand the underlying emotional and psychological frameworks better than you understand them yourself. Think about it. They've been studying human behavior their entire lives. They know what makes people tick. They understand the unspoken social dynamics in any room they walk into. When they're healthy, they use this power to help, to heal, to bring out the best in people. But when they're not, they can orchestrate situations, manipulate group dynamics, and influence outcomes in ways that nobody even realizes is happening. The scariest part? They can do all this while maintaining their image as the caring, sensitive, helpful person. They're not going to be obvious about it like some other types might be. No, their manipulation is subtle, sophisticated, and often wrapped in a package of, "I'm just trying to help," or "I only want what's best for everyone." The perfectionist rage, when standards become weapons. INFJs have this thing about perfection, but not in the way you might think. It's not just about having a clean house or perfect grades. It's about this deep, almost obsessive need for alignment between their inner vision and external reality. They've got this ideal world running in their heads, and when reality doesn't match up, that's when things get dicey. See, INFJs can become incredibly critical and judgmental when people don't live up to their standards. And I'm not talking about reasonable expectations here. I'm talking about standards that they've never actually communicated, expectations that exist only in their incredibly complex inner world. They'll hold you to standards you didn't know existed and then feel genuinely betrayed when you fail to meet them. When an INFJ is in this perfectionist shadow mode, they can become ruthlessly critical. They'll see every flaw, every shortcoming, every place where you fall short of their ideal. And because they're so good at understanding people, their criticisms hit where it hurts most. They know your insecurities, your weak spots, and when they're angry or disappointed, they can use that knowledge with surgical precision. What's worse is that they often turn this perfectionism inward too. They'll hold themselves to impossible standards and then project their self-hatred onto others when they inevitably fall short. It creates this toxic cycle where nobody, including themselves, is ever good enough. The emotional vampire, absorbing everything around them. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. INFJs are emotional sponges. They absorb the emotions of everyone around them whether they want to or not. Now you might think, oh, that's sweet, they really understand what others are feeling. But here's the dark side of that coin. When an INFJ doesn't have good boundaries, they can become emotional vampires themselves. They'll unconsciously seek out emotional intensity because that's what feels normal to them. They might create drama where there doesn't need to be any, just because the emotional charge feeds something in them. Or worse, they might become addicted to fixing broken people, not really to help them, but because it gives them a sense of purpose and control. Some unhealthy INFJs will actually cultivate relationships with people who are emotional disasters because it makes them feel needed. They'll position themselves as the savior, the only one who understands, the special person who can fix everything. But it's not really about helping. It's about feeding their own need to be needed, to be special, to be the one person who gets it. And when they're absorbing all these emotions without proper boundaries, they can become walking emotional chaos. They'll project emotions onto others, create emotional situations that mirror their inner turmoil, and basically turn their environment into an external representation of their internal emotional state. It's exhausting for everyone involved, including the INFJ themselves. The mind reader's curse. When intuition becomes paranoia. INFJs are famous for their intuition, and yeah, it can be pretty spot on. But here's what happens when that intuition goes dark. They start believing they know everything about everyone's motivations, and they're not always right. In fact, when they're operating from their shadow, they can be dead wrong while being absolutely convinced they're right. They'll read into every gesture, every word choice, every pause in conversation. They'll create elaborate narratives about why someone did something, what they really meant, what they're really thinking. And because INFJs are so used to being right about these things, they don't question their interpretations. They treat their intuitions as facts. This can lead to some seriously paranoid behavior. They'll convince themselves that someone is out to get them based on the way they said, "Good morning." They'll build entire conspiracy theories about workplace dynamics based on their intuitive hits. And the scary part? They're so confident in their intuition that they'll act on these assumptions, sometimes destroying relationships based on things that never actually happened except in their own minds. When an INFJ is in this state, trying to convince them they're wrong is nearly impossible. They trust their intuition more than they trust external reality. They'll dismiss evidence that contradicts their intuitive understanding and cherry-pick anything that confirms it. It's like arguing with someone who believes they can literally read minds. How do you prove to them that they can't? The savior complex. When helping becomes controlling. Oh boy, let's dive into the savior complex. INFJs are natural healers and helpers, but when this goes unchecked, it transforms into something much darker. They start believing they know what's best for everyone, that they have some special insight into what people need, even when those people are explicitly saying they want something different. An INFJ with a savior complex doesn't just want to help. They need to help, even when help isn't wanted or needed. They'll insert themselves into situations, offer unsolicited advice, and genuinely believe they're being selfless when they're actually being incredibly invasive and controlling. They can't stand to see someone making what they perceive as a mistake, even when it's none of their business. What makes this particularly dangerous is that they're often right about what would help someone. Their intuition and understanding of human nature means they usually do know what someone needs to hear or do. But just because you can help doesn't mean you should, and unhealthy INFJs struggle with this distinction. They'll violate boundaries in the name of helping, manipulate situations to force their help on others, and then feel hurt and betrayed when their help isn't appreciated. This savior complex can also manifest as a kind of emotional colonialism. They'll enter someone's life, decide that person needs fixing, and set about remaking them according to the INFJ's vision of who they should be. They're not seeing the person for who they are, they're seeing them as a project, a potential, something to be molded and shaped. The grudge keeper. Elephants never forget, neither do INFJs. You know how they say elephants never forget? Well, INFJs make elephants look like they have amnesia. These folks remember everything. Every slight, every betrayal, every time you were less than perfect. And I'm not talking about just remembering facts. They remember how they felt, what the weather was like, what you were wearing, the exact tone you used when you said that thing 3 years ago. Now, healthy INFJs can process these memories and let them go. But unhealthy ones? They're keeping a mental filing cabinet of every wrong that's ever been done to them. They might not bring it up right away. Oh no, that would be too simple. Instead, they'll store it, let it ferment, let it build up interest. And then, when you least expect it, when you think everything's fine, they'll pull out that receipt from 2015 and present you with the bill. The thing is, they're not always conscious they're doing this. In their minds, they're just remembering patterns or learning from past experiences. But what they're really doing is building a case against you, accumulating evidence for why you can't be trusted, why you're not who you pretend to be. Every small mistake gets added to the pile, creating this mountain of resentment that you had no idea was growing. And because INFJs are so good at hiding their true feelings when they want to, you might have no idea they're holding these grudges. They'll smile, they'll be pleasant, they'll maintain the relationship. Meanwhile, they're seething inside, adding every interaction to their mental database of wrongs. Then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, they'll explode or door slam you, leaving you wondering what the hell just happened. The hidden strategist, chess masters of human psychology. Here's something most people don't realize about INFJs. They're strategic as hell. While everyone sees them as these feeling-oriented, go-with-the-flow types, they're actually playing 4D chess in their heads constantly. They're thinking 10 steps ahead, considering multiple possibilities, planning for contingencies you didn't even know existed. When an INFJ goes dark, the strategic thinking becomes genuinely scary. They can orchestrate complex psychological scenarios, manipulate group dynamics, and influence outcomes while making it look completely natural. They understand that the best way to get what they want isn't always the direct path. Sometimes it's about planting seeds, creating conditions, setting up dominoes that will fall exactly when and how they want them to. They'll remember that offhand comment you made about your boss 6 months ago and use it at exactly the right moment to influence a decision. They'll introduce certain people to each other knowing exactly what kind of dynamic it will create. They'll share specific pieces of information with specific people, knowing how it will spread and what effect it will have. It's like they're conducting an orchestra where the musicians don't even know they're part of a performance. What makes this particularly intense is that they can do all this while maintaining their image as the quiet, sensitive, caring type. Nobody suspects the INFJ of being manipulative because they're so good at playing the role of the counselor, the supporter, the one who just wants everyone to be happy. But underneath that exterior, they're running complex psychological operations that would make intelligence agencies jealous. The idealist destruction, when vision becomes obsession. INFJs are idealists at their core, but when that idealism turns dark, watch out. They become so attached to their vision of how things should be that they'll destroy anything that doesn't align with it. Relationships, careers, entire life structures. Nothing is safe from the INFJ who's decided that reality needs to match their ideal no matter the cost. This isn't just about having high standards. This is about becoming so rigid in their vision that they can't accept any deviation from it. They'll sabotage good relationships because they're not perfect. They'll walk away from successful careers because they don't align with some abstract ideal. They'll burn bridges, destroy opportunities, and leave scorched earth behind them in pursuit of something that might not even exist. The really twisted part? They'll often frame this destruction as noble or necessary. They're not destroying things, they're being true to themselves, or refusing to settle, or maintaining their integrity. They'll convince themselves and others that their destructive behavior is actually a sign of their high principles and strong character. Meanwhile, they're leaving a trail of confused and hurt people who can't understand why something good had to die because it wasn't perfect. And here's where it gets really dark. Sometimes they'll unconsciously create situations that force them to destroy things. They'll set impossible standards, create no-win scenarios, or sabotage things subtly until they have no choice but to walk away. It's like they're addicted to the drama of destruction and rebirth, constantly tearing down and rebuilding in an endless cycle that exhausts everyone around them. The emotional manipulator, feelings as weapons. When we talk about emotional manipulation, INFJs who've gone to the dark side are operating on a completely different level. They don't just understand emotions, they understand the entire emotional ecosystem. They know how emotions connect, how they trigger each other, how they create chains of reactions. And when they want to, they can play these emotional systems like a virtuoso plays a violin. They know exactly what to say to make you feel guilty. They know how to phrase things to make you doubt yourself. They can create emotional atmospheres that push you towards certain decisions without you even realizing you're being influenced. They're masters of the subtle emotional manipulation. The slight tone of disappointment, the perfectly timed sigh, the look that says 1,000 words without saying anything at all. What's particularly insidious is that they can make you feel like your emotions are your own idea. They'll plant emotional seeds so skillfully that when those feelings bloom, you'll think they came from within you. You'll feel guilty, but you won't know why. You'll feel anxious about a decision, but you won't be able to pinpoint the source. Meanwhile, the INFJ has been carefully cultivating these emotions in you for their own purposes. They're also masters of emotional withdrawal as a manipulation tactic. They know how addictive their emotional support can be, how much people come to rely on their understanding and validation. So when they want to punish or control, they'll simply withdraw that emotional presence. Not in an obvious way, that would be too crude. No, they'll be subtle about it, just present enough that you can't call them out on it, but absent enough that you feel the loss keenly. The reality distorter, creating their own truth. Here's where things get really trippy with INFJs. They have this ability to create their own reality and then convince others it's true. Their inner world is so rich, so detailed, so real to them that they can sometimes lose track of where their inner world ends and external reality begins. And when they're operating from their shadow, they'll insist that their inner reality is the only truth that matters. They'll rewrite history in their minds, creating narratives that support their current emotional state or position. That argument you had? In their mind, it happened completely differently than how you remember it. That agreement you made? They remember it with completely different terms. And they're not lying, at least not consciously. They genuinely believe their version of reality because they've convinced themselves it's true. This reality distortion field extends to others too. They can be so convinced of their version of reality, so articulate in describing it, so emotionally compelling in their presentation of it, that others start to doubt their own memories and perceptions. It's a form of unintentional gaslighting where the INFJ genuinely believes what they're saying, making it even more convincing and confusing for everyone involved. When confronted with evidence that contradicts their reality, unhealthy INFJs will often double down rather than admit they might be wrong. They'll find ways to explain away contradictions, reframe evidence to support their narrative, or simply refuse to engage with anything that challenges their version of truth. It's like they're living in their own personal matrix and they're both Neo and the architect. Conclusion: the double-edged sword of depth. So, there you have it, the dark side of the INFJ that nobody really wants to talk about. But here's the thing I want you to understand. These shadow aspects aren't separate from what makes INFJs amazing. They're the same qualities, just expressed in unhealthy ways. The intuition that can be paranoid is also the intuition that can see truth others miss. The emotional intelligence that can manipulate is also what allows them to heal and understand in profound ways. The idealism that can destroy is also what can inspire and create beautiful visions for the future. Every INFJ has the potential for both incredible light and intense darkness. What determines which way they go isn't their personality type. It's their level of self-awareness, their emotional health, their willingness to do the hard work of growing and healing. The most dangerous INFJ isn't the one who has these shadow aspects. We all have shadows. The most dangerous INFJ is the one who refuses to acknowledge their shadow, who believes they're above these darker impulses, who thinks their intuition and feeling and caring nature makes them immune to being harmful. If you're an INFJ reading this, I'm not trying to demonize you. I'm trying to show you the power you have, both for good and for ill. Your cognitive functions give you capabilities that, when unhealthy, can be incredibly destructive. But that same power, when channeled in healthy ways, can be transformative and healing in ways other types can barely imagine. And if you're someone who knows an INFJ, understand that these darker aspects usually come from pain, from feeling misunderstood, from years of absorbing others' emotions without proper boundaries. The INFJ who door slams has usually been hurt repeatedly. The INFJ who manipulates has often been manipulated themselves. The INFJ who destroys ideals has usually had their own ideals crushed. The path forward isn't to fear INFJs or to put them on a pedestal. It's to understand them as complex beings capable of both tremendous good and significant harm. It's to recognize that their rare cognitive wiring gives them unusual capabilities that require unusual responsibility. And it's to appreciate that when an INFJ does the hard work of integrating their shadow, of becoming healthy and whole, they become forces of nature that can change the world, one profound connection at a time. Remember, every personality type has a shadow. The INFJ shadow just happens to be particularly intense because INFJs themselves are particularly intense. They don't do anything halfway, not love, not hate, not healing, and not harm. That's what makes them dangerous. And that's also what makes them incredible.